Here's a story from NBC News. Teen charged with killing parents also planned to assassinate Trump, FBI says. Nikita Kasap, 17, is accused of conspiracy to assassinate the president. Now, I wonder with those charges if they actually have real evidence he really was intending to go after Trump. Apparently, he killed his mother, 35-year-old Tatiana Kasap, and his stepfather, 51-year-old Donald Meyer. And he was accused of living with their corpses for 2 weeks. Apparently, he had a manifesto, and he had allegedly done it to take their money so he could use it for his for financing his plan to assassinate the president. Now, this guy's not a leftist. They say that he was associated with some neo-Nazi cults and anti-government extremism. But I will tell you this as well. The right is not the faction in this country advocating for violence. Nope. This guy will be condemned easily by basically every single person on the right. When the left comes out and cheers for violence, it won't just inspire other leftists. It will inspire anyone.
He's definitely, he's a crazy kid, unfortunately, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you think that killing your parent, your mother and your stepfather are going to be a means for you to kill Donald Trump and thereby incite a race war, I think that would fall under detached from reality. But I don't know. I'm just a guy on a podcast, so like, it's
delusion. It's a delusion of grandeur.
Delusion, yeah.
It's a classic delusion of grandeur. I can do something that will, and accelerationism, which is also something that you see a lot in these extremists.
I don't think that falls under right-wing ideology. If you have delusions like that, I don't think that you actually, sure, he's looking at, crazy Nazi stuff, but that's part of the delusion. That's not like that he has a coherent political philosophy that's right-leaning.
Well, it's clearly anti-Trump.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
Weird anti-Trump neo-Nazis. Well, he did condemn them totally,
Oh, but
he did.
There are very fine people on both sides of this argument, Tim. Come on now.
But not.
Right. Actually. No, but again, you have someone, what did it say? Telegram and TikTok. And, you can't sit there and say, like, we just found out all this information from the New York Times about ADHD for, decades. I'm sorry, I don't know if you had that up as a later topic, but, admitting that ADHD was totally, just totally over prescribed and
it makes men short.
And it makes men short.
Yep.
And it's, it's not that big of a deal. And yet so even if you don't have that, you still have TikTok and you still have Instagram, and you don't necessarily know what that does to developing minds.
We don't know at all what it does.
In terms of the dopamine, in terms of responses for anyone growing up. That's why I keep my kids off screens as much as possible.
The thing is, it's not until a guy is older does he start to understand height. And you've got a lot of people online. There are subreddits for short guys. And they talk about how, like, it's not fair or whatever. There's the women who say 6'6", 6 feet tall, 6-pack, and 6 figures. According to the New York Times report, according to the report from the New York Times, it was making men an inch shorter than their peers, without actually solving any of the underlying symptoms.
And again, this is all. By the way, this is all stuff that the crunchy, Maha people have been saying for years.
Yeah.
But you would be condemned as an RFK psychopath, sycophant, et cetera, kind of thing if you'd talked about it last week. But now that you've talked about it this week, it's like, well, according to the New York Times. So one of the questions that I have, though, is what does this mean politically, right? Do you think that it had anything? So we all know that the millennial generation had a lot of weird stuff happen to them, a lot of terrible stuff happen to them, a lot of just trauma associated with those formative years. But we don't really talk about the massive over-medication of millennials the way that we probably should, because I think that's clearly stunted a lot of the emotional and psychological development of millennials, just as much as Iraq and the global war on terror and 9/11 and the great financial crisis, global financial crisis, et cetera, that when you throw the massive Ritalin and Adderall on top of that, and you're like, gee, I wonder why they hate the system so much. I wonder why they have so much resentment. I wonder why they think they can't do anything. Probably because they've been told their entire lives by everyone that was put in a position of authority over them that something is wrong with you and you can't do anything and you need a pill, and you've been medicating yourself since you were a child.
Yeah. You know what I think is really crazy about this story? He was born in 2008. God. Right? We are old. Wow. It's just crazy to think that it doesn't take that much time
Got old boys.
grow a terrorist.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
That's the scary thing. That other guy from the other story.
So the homegrowns.
The homegrowns.
Homegrowns.
Trump's going to lock them up, send them away.
Lock up the homegrowns.
They are apoplectic of us. But we'll get to that in a second. But with this other guy, he was 38. This Cody Balmer, I think his name was.
Yeah.
He had a family.
38 years old, wife and kids. And socialism doesn't work out well for socialists, as we've warned them repeatedly.
I don't understand how how someone can come to the conclusion that like all these bad things are happening. I have a family that I have to take care of. So the most positive course of action I can come up with is firebombing the governor's mansion.
I mean, most criminals aren't thinking.
Right.
I mean, that's why they look, in the first place. But
I often ask myself when I see these stories about bank robbers and criminals, and I'm just thinking, like, why don't they just apply themselves to make money and get better jobs? I was like, oh, wait, right. If they had the capacity to do that, they wouldn't go and rob places. They'd literally be doing it. That's the problem. They can't. Their brains don't work.
Yeah, I actually was in it's the one story I tell about this, I guess. So I was in Intel training at one point, and I was in like this course that's sort of like a joint course that's taught everywhere. And we actually had a retired NYPD homicide detective who was in teaching the course, and they gave us this scenario, and there was all these clues, and we had to sort of figure out where this woman had gone missing from an office in New York, and we had to figure it out. And it was just a scenario kind of thing, how to analyze reports and things like that. I remember I came up with this like completely outlandish, like everything was combined, everything was working behind the scenes kind of scenario. And this I was maybe like, I don't know, like my 20s, and the detective was like, look, most criminals aren't that smart. If they were, they wouldn't choose crime in the first place.
Right.
And it was literally like she was just having an affair with her boss, and it just kind of got
look, there are dudes on the road that sell bottles of water.
Yeah.
I mean,
I knew a dude. Let me tell you, I knew a guy who would go to State in Madison, I think, down in Chicago, lay down against a light post, the street light post, with a empty Folgers can, and he'd go to sleep.
Yep.
And he'd wake up with $300 in it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And he'd buy heroin with it, which is unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate.
We're looking at this guy wrong. The Josh Shapiro guy, we're looking at him all wrong. He is he's truly found out that socialism is so bad for him that this is the only way he can afford a divorce.
Ugh.
Right. It's just, I think it comes down to, taking accountability for yourself and your life and all the problems that you might have. And instead of taking the honest and often harder route, they perpetuate a lie, or they run with a lie because it's just simply easier than coming to terms with reality.
100%.
And they find themselves in these situations where they brood and end up acting on it.
Yeah, so there's two things at play. So the first is this, by the way, we talk about this in Unhumans. We call this the Ouroboros option playing out. This is where the snake eats its own tail, which is something that the left always does. The Mensheviks always eventually rise up. Because people forget that it wasn't actually the Bolsheviks that overthrew the Romanov family, the dynasty. It was this much wider, earlier February revolution, and they set up a republic for like 6 months in Russia, and then the Bolsheviks overthrew that republic and said, yeah, you guys are too moderate. We're just going to slaughter all you guys and do things this way. And then they eventually, of course, slaughtered the Romanov family in cold blood as well, and shall never be forgotten for that. But it's also a situation where when we talk about the pathology, it's like I described it like this, like a town, and in every town, you've got that one section of town that's a little bit nicer, or we all know, right? That's how towns work. Maybe it's on a hill, but it's usually gated. And everybody else in town kind of looks at them and is like, those yuppies, those up and comers, whatever. They think they're so much better than us, etc. You're always kind of griping about them. But some people say, hey, you know what? If you want to get a house like that, it's what you said. Just try to work harder, try to better yourself, and then maybe you can better your lot in life.
No.
And then someone else comes and says, hey, what if we go kill all those people and take their stuff?
So I've got a better solution, better than all that.
Oh, better than that.
Yeah. So we from the airport today, we drove past Loudoun County. You know, you're seeing these palatial mansions.
Oh yeah, Loudoun County.
So
McLean, baby.
I'm waiting until next year when Trump's fired all of these people in the federal government that were affording these houses, and they can't afford to live there anymore, and the housing market's going to burst, and I'm just going to come in and buy those houses on the cheap. And that's how I'm going to get my
Well, yeah, the
auctioned off
DC area
foreclosure.
works a little bit different than than a fair free market area. That's for sure. What are they? Well, it's basically like this. DC is an industry town. So when Trump comes into DC and says, "Hey, we're going to get rid of government," it's like that's the industry in this town. It'd be like going to LA and saying, "Hey guys, let's stop doing movies." Right? Like they would run you out of town. Even though, by the way, people realize that most of Hollywood has actually left Hollywood.
Yeah.
Movies aren't actually made there anymore. In though they just kind of like live in the, Hollywood is even Hollywood. There's like little pockets around.
Right.
They live there for the
still.
weather.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the issue though with Doge and like the Pete Morocco guy who got fired from USAID, which he gets brought in to shut down USAID. He works to shut down USAID, shuts down most of it, and all of a sudden gets bounced like on a Friday, and everyone's like, "What's going on?"
I just thought of something before we go to the next segment. People should do is they should take whenever they see a picture of Luigi Mangione, take it and alter it slightly to make him kind of ugly, like use one of those apps, but only by like 1 or 2%. That way, all the images that start circulating will make him look ugly, and the women will be like, "Oh, he's ugly. I don't want to support him anymore." I'm only half kidding, by the way.
Just put a red hat on him with an M, and he's
By the way, that's a members only subject for why women support attractive murderers but not unattractive murderers.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.